In the quiet town of Millfield, there was a house that had been abandoned for years. It was a strange house, with boarded-up windows and an overgrown garden. Nobody knew why it had been abandoned, but the locals whispered of strange happenings that occurred within its walls. One day, a group of teenage boys decided to break into the house to explore. They crept inside, their flashlights illuminating the dusty interior. The air was musty and stale, and cobwebs clung to the ceiling. As they explored the house, they stumbled upon a locked door. It was old and rusted, and seemed to be the only thing in the house that was still intact. They tried to pry it open, but it wouldn't budge. That's when they heard it. A soft, muffled sound coming from behind the door. It sounded like someone was crying. The boys were scared, but also curious. They were determined to find out what was behind that door. After much effort, they managed to break the lock and push the door open. What they saw made their blood run cold. In the center of the room, there was a bed. On the bed lay a two-headed boy. He was small and frail, with eyes that were empty and lifeless. He didn't seem to notice the boys as they entered the room. The boys were shocked and terrified. They had never seen anything like it before. The boys' two heads were twisted and contorted, each one looking in a different direction. It was as if they were fighting for control of their body. The boys wanted to leave, but something held them back. They felt drawn to the boy, as if he was calling out to them. They moved closer to the bed, and that's when they saw the note. It was written in shaky handwriting, and it said, "Please take care of our son. We can't handle him anymore." The boys were horrified. They realized that this boy had been abandoned by his parents, left to die alone in this house. As they stared at the boy, they noticed something strange. His two heads were beginning to move in sync, as if they were communicating with each other. Suddenly, the boy began to speak. His voice was soft and gentle, but there was a sinister undertone to his words. He told the boys that he had been born with two heads, and that his parents had been unable to cope with him. They had locked him away in this house and left him to die. The boy then made the boys a promise. He said that if they took care of him, he would grant them their every wish. They could have anything they wanted, as long as they looked after him. The boys were frightened, but also tempted by the promise. They left the house that night, but couldn't stop thinking about the two-headed boy. They knew that they had to go back and take care of him. Over the next few weeks, the boys visited the two-headed boy every day. They brought him food and water, and sat with him for hours at a time. They were amazed at how intelligent he was, and how much he knew about the world. But there was something off about the boy. He seemed to be getting stronger, and his two heads were becoming more and more in sync. The boys began to feel like they were losing control, like the boy was manipulating them. One night, the boys woke up to find the two-headed boy standing over their beds. He was grinning, his two heads working in perfect unison. He told them that he was going to give them what they wanted, but in return, he wanted their bodies. The boys tried to run, but the two-headed boy was too strong. His grip was tight, and they could feel the force of his fingers digging into their skin. They screamed for help, but no one was around to hear them. The two-headed boy dragged them towards the woods, where he disappeared into the trees. As they stumbled through the darkness, the boys could feel their fear growing. They didn't know what the two-headed boy was going to do to them. They tried to reason with him, but he didn't seem to hear them. His two heads swiveled back and forth, as if searching for something. Finally, the two-headed boy stopped and turned to face them. His eyes were dark and empty, and his mouth twisted into a grotesque smile. "I'm hungry," he said, his voices blending together in an eerie harmony. "I think I'll have a little snack." The boys tried to run, but it was no use. The two-headed boy was faster and stronger than they were. He caught them easily and sank his teeth into their flesh. They screamed as he ripped into their bodies, tearing off chunks of flesh and swallowing them whole. The two-headed boy seemed to relish their screams, and he kept feeding on them long after they were dead. Finally, he was sated, and he dropped their lifeless bodies to the ground. The next day, the boys were reported missing. The police searched the woods, but they found no trace of them. The only evidence they found was a single footprint, a footprint with 2 sets of toes. Rumors began to spread about the two-headed boy. Some people claimed to have seen him lurking in the shadows, watching them with his dark, empty eyes. Others claimed that he only came out at night, when the moon was full. No one knew for sure where the two-headed boy had come from or what he was. Some people believed that he was a demon, sent to terrorize the town. Others thought that he was a genetic mutation, the result of some bizarre scientific experiment. But one thing was for certain: the two-headed boy was real, and he was out there somewhere, waiting for his next victims. And the people of the town knew that they could never let their guard down, for fear that he would come for them next. Years went by, and the legend of the two-headed boy faded into obscurity. But every once in a while, someone would claim to have seen him, lurking in the shadows. And the people of the town would look at each other nervously, wondering if the nightmare would ever truly be over.